Look at a modern pharmacy shelf. Rows of white bottles, precise milligrams, and child-proof caps designed to heal every disease with mathematical certainty. At first, this just looks like a standard practice, but our relationship with medicine is hiding a much darker history. Long before laboratory testing, poison and medicine were completely interchangeable. What heals can also kill in the wrong amount. Nowhere was this truer than in the Middle Ages. In the absence of modern medicine, physicians used tonics and potions to quiet pain and break fevers. But in a world without standardized doses, the line between a cure and a corpse was razor thin, and everyday people paid for that gamble with their lives. So, which medieval drugs were the most notorious for laying bodies down in the dirt? And why did healers continue to prescribe them when the safety margin between a remedy and a corpse was practically non-existent? To understand this, we have to look past our modern reality, because it begins long before safe surgeries and germ-free operating rooms. It begins with a world in absolute, agonizing pain. Medieval healers solved this one problem with a desperate, brutal solution. They turned to the Earth's most toxic forces to provide temporary reprieve. In this dark era of medicine, people believed that letting out blood or cutting open flesh without an anesthetic was the only path to survival. That terrifying reality meant an agonizing death was practically guaranteed for the sick. That guarantee, in turn, forced a desperate gamble, where the chance to escape into a drug-induced delirium didn't look like a lethal poison. It looked a lot like a miracle. One of the most popular tools was Atropa belladonna, more commonly known as deadly nightshade, a plant with beautiful purple flowers and glossy black berries. To understand how deadly nightshade worked, we have to look at its central mechanism and how its chemical composition hijacked the body. It isn't just a simple toxin. It's like a rogue hacker cutting the brake lines of a car. Normally, your nervous system sends automatic signals to slow your heart and keep your internal organs running smoothly. Belladonna blocks those signals completely. With the brakes cut, the body goes into sudden hyperdrive. The heart races, the skin flushes, and the brain enters a violent delirium. It remains one of the most toxic plants in the world. Its potency was so unpredictable that what seemed like a harmless amount could become a lethal dose. But the story of nightshade isn't as simple as a plant meant only for death. In Renaissance Italy, high society women willingly dropped this lethal juice directly into their eyes to dilate their pupils. More importantly, medieval physicians often combined it with opium in minute amounts to relieve severe pain. In those desperate rooms, the terrifying hallucinations caused by the drug were actively welcomed as a form of relief. This is the part most people get wrong about the history of the drug. Atropa belladonna, which became associated with witchcraft, truly caused distorted perceptions and a literal sensation of weightlessness. The users genuinely believed they were flying. Because medieval authorities couldn't separate medical anesthesia from magical delirium, surgeons ultimately abandoned this life-saving drug. Yet, that exact mechanism that terrified medieval priests is why belladonna is indispensable today. Modern pharmacology has finally mastered the dosage. Today, that same lethal chemical is a vital part of modern eye medicine, used by doctors to safely dilate pupils for routine exams. Next on the physician's shelf was black henbane, or Hyoscyamus niger. If belladonna was cutting the brakes, henbane acted like an aggressive volume dial, turning down the nervous system's capacity to register pain. In the Middle Ages, physicians utilized this sedative property through a method called fumigation, burning henbane seeds and directing the toxic smoke right into a patient's mouth to lessen agonizing toothaches. Too much of this inhaled smoke, however, instantly turned the volume dial down permanently, causing a sudden loss of muscular control, terrifying hallucinations, and a fatal coma. But the story isn't as simple as a plant smoked in secret. Medieval practitioners knew exactly how dangerous henbane was, so they developed complex delivery systems to control it. They boiled it into liquid extracts or mixed it into fatty ointments, rubbed directly onto the skin so the drug could bleed slowly and predictably into the bloodstream. It shows that medieval medicine wasn't just blind guesswork. It was a highly calculated effort to weaponize a deadly narcotic for pain relief, constantly battling the fact that the margin between relieving pain and causing a fatal overdose was terrifyingly small. Yet, this terrifying drug laid the vital foundation for how we manage severe trauma today. Modern pharmacology has mastered the chemical detail. Today, black henbane is a critical tool in modern medicine, used to regulate heart rates and treat stomach spasms. The medieval nightmare didn't change. We just finally figured out how to turn the dial without stopping the heart. Then came the undisputed king of medieval deadly drugs, the opium poppy, or Papaver somniferum. Opium is powered by natural alkaline compounds like morphine and codeine. Opium acts like a heavy security curtain dropping over the brain's pain receptors. It doesn't just dull a throbbing wound. It completely cuts the communication line. To harvest it, medieval apothecaries would use the seeds, allowing a milky juice to bleed out and dry into a sticky resin. In tiny amounts, this resin was a medical miracle, stopping intense dysentery, which is severe, life-threatening diarrhea, and offering the only real relief during brutal battlefield amputations. But too many opium drops caused a patient to go from a pain-free sleep into a fatal coma, where the brain simply forgot to tell the lungs to take another breath. But the story of opium isn't as simple as a raw drug kept in a jar. Because it was so powerful, medieval physicians used it to create theriac, which was essentially a costly cure-all medicine. Theriac combined opium with up to 60 other bizarre ingredients, including wine, the crushed flesh of vipers, and rare spices. It was heavily relied upon by everyone from village priests to kings to fight off everything from snake bites to the bubonic plague. This shows that medieval medicine wasn't just using opium casually, they treated it as a sacred, complex shield against the horrors of disease, entirely blind to the fact that their miraculous shield was highly addictive and inherently lethal. This is the part most people get wrong. We often think medieval doctors laid people down because they were careless with their recipes. But the real villain wasn't a bad doctor. It was nature itself. Unlike modern pills where every dose is identical, raw poppy resin has an incredibly unpredictable strength. A poppy grown during a dry, blazing summer could hold 5 times more morphine than a poppy harvested after a rainy spring. An apothecary could measure out the exact same weight of resin they used the week before, completely unaware that this specific batch was highly concentrated. The patient wasn't killed by a medical mistake. They were killed by the shifting chemistry of the soil. Yet that exact same brain-blocking curtain is what anchors our emergency rooms today. Modern pharmacology eventually isolated morphine and codeine from the raw poppy, taking the guesswork out of the equation. Today, we use these highly refined opioids for severe post-surgical recovery and specialized medical care for people living with a serious illness. Over the centuries, these volatile compounds have become much more than just deadly drugs. They became the foundational architecture of survival. The terrifying trials of medieval medicine shaped our understanding of the body's resistance, proving that our modern, safe medical landscape wasn't built on a sudden scientific revelation. It was carved step by step out of an ancient landscape of sheer desperation. So, which medieval drugs were the most notorious for laying bodies down? It turns out the deadliest drugs used by medieval physicians weren't actually designed as poisons at all. The weapon that filled the cemeteries was simply the unpredictability of nature. It was the nightshade leaf that grew too toxic in the dry heat. It was the henbane vapor inhaled a breath too long. It was the poppy resin concentrated by the summer sun. Pre-modern medicine wasn't a history of ignorance. It was a survival story written in shadows. A proof of a time when humanity looked into the eyes of absolute agony and chose a desperate gamble over surrender. Every toxic tonic and lethal potion left behind a dark trace, a stepping stone that eventually led us out of the wilderness of guesswork and into the light of modern science. It shows us that the line between a remedy and a corpse has never truly belonged to the physician. The difference, as it has always been, is entirely in the dosage.